You're listening to the Identity Sports Podcast, where we dive into the world of faith, sports, and inspiration with athletes from across the country. I'm your host, Zach Vogel. Hey listeners, today I want to tell you about an incredible company that's revolutionizing brain health and performance, CalmWaves. CalmWaves is dedicated to helping individuals achieve optimal brain health and enhance mental performance through innovative and proven methods. Whether you're an athlete aiming to boost your game, a professional seeking peak productivity, or simply someone who wants to maintain a sharp and healthy mind, CalmWaves has the solutions you need. Led by the expert Dr. Doug Cowan, CalmWaves offers personalized programs and cutting-edge technologies designed to unlock your brain's full potential. They provide comprehensive cognitive assessments and at-home treatment plans tailored to support your brain health. Plus, they can even set up brain health and performance centers right at your facility. CalmWaves specializes in brain technology solutions for issues like anxiety, ADHD, head trauma, and other central nervous system disorders. You can trust that you're receiving the best care and technology to support your specific needs. If you're interested in learning more, reach out to CalmWaves today. Visit their website at calmwaves.com or send Dallas an email at dallas@calmwaves.com. That's calmwaves.com, or email dallas@calmwaves.com. And don't miss their podcast episode with PGA mental performance coach Rick Sessinghaus, available on the CalmWaves podcast. Don't miss out on the opportunity to transform your brain health and performance with CalmWaves. Get in touch with them now and take the first step towards a brighter, sharper future. Welcome to the Identity Sports Podcast. I'm joined here today by Brandon Barriera of the Toronto Blue Jays, who is the 23rd overall draft pick and the 2022 MLB pick, currently sitting at the number 4 ranked prospect in the Toronto Blue Jays organization. So, Brandon, it's a pleasure having you today.
No, thank you for having me, Zach. Just ready to talk about, my faith and what God has done in my life.
So, looking back at your career, I mean, you're pretty young. You're still early in your career, but it's just remarkable to see really kind of the success you've had your entire career. At every level. Basically throwing 90 plus since you were 15. So, talk us through about just kind of being that natural prodigy. Do you have a family member that was really inspiring in your coach? And how'd you get to that point?
You know, I would like to say it was always never that easy. I would definitely say when I was younger, I wasn't nearly as talented as I am now. Kind of growing up, was labeled as like the wild child, when it came to getting on the mound and throwing, and I was blowing games, come in when we're up by 5-6 runs, blow games. Just not a lot of belief in myself, and the people surrounding me, obviously, they see me going in the game, they're like, oh, here we go again. But that was pretty much it for a good amount of my beginning of my baseball career, since I was probably 8 to 15. It kind of just started with, like clearing that outside noise. I've always been a believer. Grew up, both of my parents were believers, and they're now to this day still very firm in their faith. But it never really stuck with me. At a young kid, you just get sidetracked by all these different things. Like nothing in the world matters, around you, but yourself and the time. But yeah, I mean, going through it all, I had a big jump from where I was in 8th grade to my freshman year of high school. I kind of give credit to my pitching coach back at home, who's been my coach for, years. He's only been the only travel ball coach I ever played for. And, he was the only one who kind of saw something in me and was like, I'm willing to take a chance to help this kid and sit down, talk to him, figure out what's on his mind, what he wants to do, what we can do to get better. And just seeing that gave a little bit of, encouragement, because it's like, okay, well, one person believes in me, and that one person happens to be the coach. It's, sometimes it's a little bit skeptical because you're like, oh, it's just your coach. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You're play on the team, obviously it's your coach. He's going to have to root for you. But after a while, he was taking me to travel ball tournaments, staying with him for travel ball tournaments because, sometimes my parents just didn't have the time to go up there. Or, money was a little bit tight sometimes, so I would just go with him. And for him to just kind of show me, like, hey man, like I'm here with you. Like you're not by yourself. Was the biggest thing, and that's kind of where I started slowly ticking up from when it came my freshman year to my senior year of high school, and now where I'm at now. Yeah, it was just like a slow progression. I started throwing hard freshman year and kind of just took off after that.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. It's so important, the power of having someone that also believes in yourself as well. Just so we know there's so many times as an athlete where you can doubt yourself. In any given day, you can be confident one inning and the next inning, all of a sudden you're doubting your ability again. So to have that reassurance is cool. Did you have a favorite team growing up or a favorite player that maybe you tried to emulate your game after?
Um, I mean, I grew up in New York. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I lived there till about I was 9. We moved to South Florida. My family and I grew up a Yankees fan.
Ooh,
Everybody grew up a Yankee fan in my in my
okay.
my
We'll let it
family.
slide.
But yeah, I mean, my favorite pitcher growing up was Andy Pettit. I
Okay.
loved watching him pitch. He was just your definition of a bulldog. He was going out there. He's a workhorse. Go out there, throw until he couldn't. Whether he gave up a 2-run home run or he was striking out everybody or getting ground balls. No matter what it was, he was still out there and he was competing. And same thing in the playoffs. I mean, totally different guy in the playoffs where it came to like made it not
Mhm.
might have not had the greatest year, but when it came to playoffs, he was your guy to go to when push came to shove. But yeah, I grew up and I loved watching him pitch growing up.
Yeah, you can see the determination in his face when he pitches on the mound, and so
Yeah,
I'm an Angel fan, so they played the Yankees quite a bit, so I got
yeah.
to see him pitch, and usually he pretty much dominated the Angels, but that's good. I mean, that's a great pitcher to emulate, especially as a lefty. So that's really cool. So you also played on the 12U and 15U USA teams. Looked you won gold with the 15U team. Um, were you always kind of in the back of your mind, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, or was it really kind of high school, your coach believing in you, where you started to kind of click, like, hey, this could be something for me?
I've always at the end of the day, I'm like growing up as a kid, I'm always like, hey man, I want to play in the MLB. I want to be a professional baseball player. Parents telling me stories all the time of me just sitting there and pointing out Andy Pettit and saying, hey, like I want to be like that. Um, so I've always it's been my dream, my whole life, but it really didn't click like this could actually happen until around my junior year of high school.
Hmm.
After my junior year of high school, going into my senior year, it was kind of when everything starts to settle in. You start to have like those in-house meetings with different teams. They start reaching out to you. They start randomly showing up to games, and then next thing you know, you turn around and there's a bunch of people there, and you're just like, wow. But yeah, I would say it was always been a dream of mine. I love the game, and I've always wanted to be the best I can be while playing this game. But yeah, it didn't really settle in until like my junior year of high school.
Okay. Yeah. So all of a sudden, these scouts start showing up. You commit to Vanderbilt. Don't end up going to Vanderbilt. You get drafted out of high school. You're actually at the MLB draft, which is a huge honor, and not a lot of players get to say that that was something they experienced. Tell us a little bit. What was that like for you and your family? And just hearing Rob Manfred mention your name and getting to give him a hug on stage.
No, I mean, another one of those things where it feels like it's almost like a dream come true. Like I've been watching the draft all my life. Seeing those guys. Well, it was in California, but usually it's at MLB Network Studios, and you see those guys going up there, putting up their names on the board and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But when I was there, man, it was just super emotional. Like and being able to be there with my family and my girlfriend, and even the coach Nick James, he was there as well. But just being around the people that I love and that have kind of supported me throughout this whole journey and, sacrificed everything for me was great, man. Like it was just super emotional, like it doesn't settle in until you hear your name and you're kind of like, wow, like, like these past 10 years that I've worked, timelessly, time after time is slowly starting to pay off, like obviously, like at the end of the day, like, whatever God has in store for me, whether it is baseball or if it's not baseball, like those are, other different plans. But in that moment, it's like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. Like this is finally happening.
Yeah, it's almost like maybe 30 seconds of gratification. It's like, okay, now the work starts again.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
now you've reached one part, now you got to reach the next one, right? You got to work your way up. So you've been trying to do that, and there's some stats out there, in the minor leagues, and but now you had some arm issues, and then about almost a month ago, now all of a sudden you're down again. You come back super healthy this year, about throw about a inning and a third this year, and something just happens, right? And then that leads into Tommy John, and you got an internal brace. Tell us a little bit about the mindset, how that happened, and then as an athlete, injuries are not something that we look forward to, and especially being that highly regarded in a farm system, there's a certain level of pressure that I'm sure you may or may not feel. How are you kind of handling that? I know it's probably raw. It's probably still really real for you. You're in the middle of it. But tell us a little bit about that, and you've mentioned your faith throughout. How has that kind of been a rock for you through this?
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I've always been a believer, but I never really gave my life to Christ. I never really sat there and accepted Christ. And got baptized, I think, when I was in eighth grade, but same thing, like I never fully understood it all, just kind of something that you did, like back at home with all your friends and, but actually got rebaptized this past off season and,
Awesome.
just kind of finally, yeah, it was great. Me, my girlfriend and I, we both actually got baptized and it's, it's tough, man. Like as easy as it is to sit here and tell you, like, hey, man, like I'm firm in my faith. It's not always like that, and I'm sure like
Mhm.
going back to last year, probably wasn't. I know for a fact that I wasn't doing. I was putting myself in situations where I shouldn't be doing things that I should have been doing, and then that leads to injuries. Putting myself in a lot of stress, like a lot of just doubt, with all these injuries coming back from injuries. And in the back of my head, it's like, like, man, like I just want to go play. I want to show them why they picked me. And, that eagerness to go back out there and play and show them what you can do, you know. But, time after time just kept getting hurt. So it was real easy to fall into that pit, fall into all these different temptations, fall into just, not fully trusting God. And, as much as I could say, oh yeah, I can trust God, I trust I trust His process, I trust His plan, whatever He has for me. Back last year when I was going through it all, it was easy for me to say that, and then next thing you know, I turn around and you know, it's totally I'm doing totally opposite of what I've been saying. But yeah, it was tough last year, and I knew, after talking with my dad and my mom, after I finally last year, I think it was towards the in June, I got hurt again and kind of was like, all right, you're done for the season. And talking with my family and telling them, I don't know, what I could possibly be doing more. I felt like as if I was doing everything that I could physically wise. I was going in there crushing the gym. Like just wanted to get back on the field. Doing all my throwing program, going all the arm care, all the rehab that I was doing at the time. I'm doing everything and I'm giving it 110%. But it was just like I was putting my identity into
Mm.
baseball. And that's where I kind of started realizing like, hey man, like this means nothing. Like it's only such a small portion of our lives where it's like, I knew that I needed to almost kind of get like, I hate to say it this way, but like your priorities in line. Like my priority, like I felt like God was almost like here and baseball and everything else was up here. I was kind of like pushing him off to the side. And yeah, I mean, after having talks with my family, our mental performance coaches here, who I have a good relationship with, who's also a believer, talking with him, not only that, but having a couple guys in the Blue Jays org to talk to as well. Tucker Toman, who I've been playing with pretty much all of my life, or playing against, and then Patrick Gallagher, who's in high A right now for us. Just having talks with them, and seeing them grow as I'm growing. Like, and that's kind of what really put me into this spot this year. And like going into the off season, I'm like, I'm so excited. Like I finally accepted Christ, finally
Yeah.
gave my life to God.
Now it's
And I,
supposed to be nice and easy, isn't it?
yeah, right. It is right, and you
Yeah.
think that, and
Yeah.
I know like talking with all the guys, and they tell me all the time it's not that easy. Going to church, hearing everybody's different testimonies. Hearing your pastors, going to Bible studies with guys who are played in different organizations who are saying the same thing. And you're just kind of like in the back of your head, you're like, no, like it's gonna be great.
Hmm.
Like I finally did it all. I did what I needed to do, and yeah, I mean, like was ready for the season. Doing the Bible studies throughout the week, reading the Bible daily. Being in constant prayer with God during the off season, and yeah, I mean, I was ready. Had felt like I like all that the weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like I was like, okay, I can finally go and play in peace. Not have to worry about playing for other people or trying to press other people. Because my identity is not in baseball;
Yeah.
it's in Christ. And that's all it was. And unfortunately, I went out there, and God has different plans for me now, but it was tough. I mean, even after it was our second game of the season, my first game of the year. Go out there feeling great. First inning was actually what I blew out, but I didn't really think too much of it. Just felt a little bit of pain. I was like, all right, like I want to go back out there and see, kind of test it. Yeah, and wasn't myself. Got pulled out. Called the team out, and I mean, right off the rip, it's right off the bat, like literally right off the bat, you start thinking about every single
Yeah.
like outcome that could happen after from all this. Like I'm thinking about, oh, is it Tommy John surgery? Like what is it? What is it? Is it this? Is it that? Is it the stuff that I've been dealing with last year that I thought was away? And it's just like this constant, like just like circle, just going
Hmm.
back around in circles, and then it's like, well, man, like why are you so stressed out about it? Like, and that's what happened. In between innings, I sat there and I prayed to God because I felt it in that first inning, like I said, and I said, hey God, like I just want this to be done. Like if it means that I don't pitch or I got to take time off, like I whatever it is, whatever's in your will, let it be done. And when I went out there for that second inning and I turned around and my velo was down almost 10 miles an hour,
Hmm.
I was just kind of like, okay, well,
Yeah.
this is the sign that he's trying to give me, you know, so, and that's what happened. I got off the field, went into our locker room and went into one of our little rooms that we have in there. And I just got on my knees, started praying and, just telling God, I give it to you. I give these injuries to you. I give this doubt, this anxiety, this anger. I give it all to you, and whatever it is, whatever you have in store for me, I'm willing to fully accept it and just get to it. So That's what it's been like.
Yeah, and just like just like you were saying, you can sit here and you can tell people watching that, hey, this is what I'm doing, but it's like a every second battle. You can accept that now, and then the next minute, that doubt creeps right back up. And so you can tell that it's it's still raw, and we're going to be supporting and encouraging and praying you through it. But it's just the reality of it is you people who are like, okay, I accepted Christ, I've got my faith side figured out, I'm now going to be a better athlete. It's not always how it works. There can be some truth to that. You touched on it a little bit. It's almost the aspect of playing free, right? It doesn't matter if you go 0 for 4. It doesn't matter if you give up 7 earned runs. You're still Brandon. To your friends and family, their love for you doesn't change depending on your outcome on the field. And so
100%.
understanding that can help you play free and playing like a kid. You think back on some of your best times. When I was a kid, I was having fun. And so that was when I played some of my best. And so there's definitely that aspect to it, but, then there's that other side of, trying to make it to, your dream of being a Major League Baseball player, and it just seems like it gets shut down at every turn. You're doing all the right things, you're in rehab, you're showing up early, you're staying late, you're reading all that stuff, you're focusing on the mental health, but it just for whatever reason, it's not quite clicking yet. Doesn't mean it's not gonna click, but it's trusting God's timing. And so when you're talking to teammates and reading things, are there certain verses, are there certain scriptures that are kind of standing out to you during this time?
Um, I mean, for me, since I've been going through this, the biggest scripture that's helped me through this is through it all is Romans 8:18, and it's
Mm,
the pain and suffering that you are going through now doesn't account for what's coming later, and that's kind of where my head's been at this whole time. Like God gave me this time, this year or whatever it is to focus on what's right and what's good. Strengthen the relationship that I have with Him. And not only that, but throughout this time, I can impact other people's lives. I can sit
absolutely.
here and spread the word. And as much as I can speak it, my actions have to be the same. So I think that's the biggest thing as well. Like going through this with a positive mindset. Being grateful every day. So that way, like if guys see me, they're like, oh, like he just went down with an injury that's gonna have him out for a year, but yeah, he's coming in here with a smile on his face and he's happy to see everybody. He's greeting everybody. Like, well, why is that? And like, what's he doing?
Yeah,
So
something
that
different.
yeah, that brings up the conversation. It's like planting the seed. But yeah, I mean, just being in conversation with all the guys, like I mentioned before, Tucker, Patty, even a couple other guys that we talk with, just being in conversation with them helps the most, because these guys are going through it as well. They're playing, like I'm sure Tucker's not playing the greatest he would be wanting to play right now. Same thing with maybe Patty. They probably think that they could be a lot better, but they know that their identity is not in baseball. It's such a small portion of our lives, and that it's not all going to end. Like there's another day, there's a new day, and it's a game at the end of the day. Like it's a game that I'm able to play by the grace of God. So that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing. Like just I feel like the biggest thing was being in conversation and not being scared to open up a little bit. Talking with them. Crying if we had to. You know what I mean? Like like those little things. Going out and eating dinner and sitting there for 4 or 5 hours just talking. And it's I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and that's that's so inspiring, Brandon. I mean, you talk to guys who play in the major leagues for 20 years, and that sometimes some of the stuff that you're talking is stuff that doesn't click for people until after they're done playing. And like, man, if I knew that when I was back playing, the impact that I could have had on these guys. And so for you to be able to sit here and be in the thick of, just fresh off of surgery, and the road ahead, it's well documented. the time and effort that it takes to come back from Tommy John. And you're sitting here saying, there is some hope, and you look at, Jesus's life. He was out in the world, and it wasn't just him sharing the gospel, but a lot of times it was just fellowshipping. So going to dinner with teammates, going to dinner with people, and just being yourself. And I can think back to, my playing days, and when people were injured, you avoided them in the dugouts, or like they just were not happy people, and you felt bad, because they weren't right mentally, and they're off somewhere else. And so when you have someone that is going through that, and they're picking up their teammates, and they're cheering on the teammates, and they're showing up at every function event that the team may have, it is different. It's countercultural. And so that's what gets people to stop and say, okay, what is Brandon doing differently in his life? Maybe I've seen Brandon before. He figured out his faith stuff. So anyone can live out a good Christian faith when everything is going perfect. But
Yeah.
what does it look like when when the storms hit? And there's going to
Yeah.
be storms. And you look at the disciples, and there was storm after storm after storm. And so, my encouragement to you is just to keep going through it. I mean, I love the verse that you mentioned, and it's such a timely verse. And the scriptures are filled with those things that can give you that inspiration to keep going. So thank you for what you're doing in that organization right now, and just being authentic and real in your faith. um, when you're kind of going through that in your day to day, well, even what does your day to day look like now versus your playing days?
It's just a lot of it gets a little bit monotonous, like it's just the same thing, as of right now, it's the same thing day after day. But it's like you said before, it's real quick to get into that, negative mindset where it's just kind of like, oh, I'm tired of doing this. Like I'm good. My arm feels good. Let's move on to the next phase, whatever it may be. But like my biggest thing is just being in the present, like being here, enjoying it. Because I mean, this could be taken away from me in any day now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what God has in store, but maybe he turns around and he's like, hey, like, I don't want you to play baseball anymore. I want you to do this instead. So I think of that daily, and I mean that's pretty much what it is right now.
Yeah, I love that, and it makes me think of, there's a one of my mentors has a quote. It's right now means everything. So where
Mhm.
you're at right now is exactly where God wants you. It's exactly where God has planted you, and you're called to be a light to everyone around you that you come in impact with where you're at. And so if you're, Brandon, there's probably going to be a few kids watching this that aspire to be just like you. They're going to go and look up your YouTube highlights, and they're going to be your biggest fans now following your career. What advice would you give them, or encouragement would you give them at an early age to kind of, walk and grow both faith and, just the baseball side?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing of all is, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to sit there and be in prayer and ask God questions. I try to stay in prayer throughout the day. Almost like it's like God's right next to me. And I'm like, constantly talking to Him. Because I feel like it just keeps me going. Because it's like, I'm one out of billions of people in this world. But God made me the way that I am. And He made me with a purpose. And it's just kind of still, like still trying to find that purpose. And if it's baseball, I'm going to continue to use my platform and let Him use me as a vessel to continue to grow His word and show people His love. And I think that's the biggest thing, for young kids. It's you can get caught up in social media, you can get caught up in all this different stuff where it's real easy to go and scroll on your phone for 4 hours, 5 hours, and that do nothing. But taking the time out of the day, an hour or whatever long you want it to be, to sit there, be in prayer, read His word, watch videos, find different guys to watch. Um, I love seeing Cliff Nettle, all his stuff. Like, he goes out to all these different college campuses and he, kind of debates other people and has conversations. Like hearing that and seeing people like that, it's like like I want to be like that. I want people to turn around and if they're questioning my faith, I have the answer. To turn around and be like, hey, like no, this is what's right, or like let's talk about it. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be scared to talk to older guys, talk to your parents, open up about what you're feeling. Not only that, but just believe that God gave everybody a purpose. Like, and you may not know it now, may not know it 10 years from now, may not know it 20 years from now, but eventually you'll know. And just continue to strive to be the best person that you can be. If it's in sports and not in sports, just being that great person that you can be, being the light in people's days, and just leading people to Christ.
Yeah, that's so good. Thanks, Brandon. There's so many good, valuable lessons in what you were just saying. I mean, the prayer without ceasing, whatever you're doing in life, and even in this podcast, just as you're saying and as you're talking, just God use this, amplify this voice, let this conversation be honoring to you. So it doesn't have to be these deep, recited prayers. It's just having a conversation like we are now, like how's your day going, or like just to
Yeah,
be constant in that, or and no prayer is too silly. Where God be with me during this test. I'm feeling nervous.
yeah,
On my nerve. Like it's just those little things. And when you start praying like that, then you start noticing some changes. And all of a sudden, when you're in prayer with the big things, you should be in prayer with the little things and
mhm,
all of that stuff. So again, thank you, Brandon, so much for your time today. I'm gonna go home and buy a jersey. You got new fans all across the world that are gonna
thank
be
you.
watching.
I mean, like I was saying before, I mean, it's real easy to say it. It's real easy to be able to sit here and talk to you about it, but are you actually doing it?
Mm,
Are you actually accepting Christ, living for Christ? Doing what's right. I think that's the biggest thing. And as much as I can sit here and pray to God, and have these prayers, I actually have to do. You know what I mean? I can't expect God to give me a blessing if I'm not meeting Him.
mm.
Halfway. Like as much as I put out, I gotta, or put it to Him, I gotta put out as well. Like I think that's the biggest thing too. Whereas where we seem to like give it to Him, like, hey God, could you do this, or like for example, hey God, could you help me with this test, but yet you never study for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or like, hey God, could you help me with this? I want to go out here and throw 5, 6 innings and throw a no hitter, but you never put yourself in that position. Are you ready to do that? Have you even have you built up for that, or have you
Yeah.
worked hard in the gym for that? I think that's the biggest thing too. Like it's just like you got to be able to put in the work. You know.
Yeah. Absolutely. You gotta. There's so much truth to that. Yeah. Thanks, Brandon. So, feel free, this episode, you check it out anywhere you listen to your podcast. Just stories just like Brandon, we'll be sharing these on a weekly basis, where really just the whole goal is to come on here, talk about sport a little bit and the accomplishments, the fun stuff. But ultimately, it's all about finding your identity in Christ. And as Brandon mentioned quite a bit, but Brandon, we're pulling for you. We're praying for your recovery. We'll be following along. Thanks again for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Zach, for having me.
You might not have already realized it, that this podcast is produced by a nonprofit, donor supported Identity Sports. We're just a little nonprofit producing this podcast in the beautiful loft of a downtown Phoenix thrift store. We aren't getting paid big bucks like a for profit business. No, sir. We're making this podcast not for money, but because everyone on our team believes in what we do. We give athletes a platform to share their faith and their inspirational stories. But that means that we rely on people like you. If you've been to one of our Tales from the Two or Tales from the Dugout gatherings, or if you've watched or heard an inspirational story from an athlete who found their true identity in Christ, or if this is the first time someone shared or you're come across our podcast, I have a request. I wonder if you'd take a quick minute to do something for us. Get into your browser and search for identitysports.com and find the donate page. It doesn't matter how much you commit, a few dollars or a few hundred. It just matters that you show us that you want us to keep telling these stories. My recommendation, pause this episode and do it real quick before you forget at identitysports.com.